So Nio is gonna have their earnings in a couple of days on the 21st of March, and Xpeng just had theirs a couple of days ago. But before we look at the expectations for Nio's earnings, let's have a look at the weekly delivery insurance numbers for China. Tesla is starting really great over the past 3 weeks. Last week they had 15,300 deliveries, and this uptake in the blue bars, as you can see for Tesla, is mainly over the past 3 weeks due to the updated Model Y Juniper start of delivery in China. Nio is struggling a little bit, I would say, in 2025, nowhere near those numbers that they promised yet again. If we go as well to the monthly delivery numbers compared to previous year, you can see that although in January and February, represented by the white and gray bars here compared to the green and blue, which were 2023 and 2024, they're still better off on January and February, but not to the extent that I think the market is happy with. Now, this bar of 30,000, obviously this is not updated. They will most likely not be able to do that now, so I have to update that number, probably closer to 20,000 in best case scenario. We can see that again, going back to the weekly delivery numbers for March, we can see that 3,300 this week, 3,000 last week, that's 6,300, with roughly half of the month remaining, and the first 2 of days of this month was obviously included in this 4,900. So if you take, let's say, another 1,500 there, we could argue that we are at 7,000 to 8,000 deliveries already, maybe pushing 15,000, possibly 20,000. But I think that 30,000 deliveries is gonna be out of play as things stand currently. Now, there are good news for Nio though. We can see that the CEO William Li details how Nio should control cost in internal speech. I quite like that. I think the market reaction to this is much more actually important than people estimate. I don't think the weekly delivery numbers is something that's going to affect the stock price currently, but stuff like this is for sure very important to have the CEO being aware of that the cost cannot continue at this way. Because if we look at the expectations for Nio's earnings, I'm not like, again, Q4 delivery numbers were very good, right? So if you go here, you can see they delivered 73,000 vehicles, 73,796, which was very, very good. A record and all-time high for Nio. This middle column here is my updated numbers of what I expect Nio. Let's zoom in a little bit. I think the revenue will come in at 2.9 billion, of which 300 million will be from other sales, which is kind of battery swaps and others. Total cost of sales at 2.6 billion, which leaves us up with a gross profit of roughly 300 million. Then they have the operating expenses, including SG&A, R&D, and other operating income. That equals to roughly 1.1 billion, a little bit less than that. Let's say 1 billion, which all of it combined should be kind of net loss of around 700 million or so, which is very close to the Q3 number of 2023. Now, this is a very, very late. Most of the companies have already had their Q4 earnings. I mean, in just 4 weeks from now, we are starting to see Q1 earnings of a lot of companies. So this is an extremely late earnings report. And I think it has to do with this very weak delivery numbers and guidance that they are obviously going to give for Q1 of 2025. And why do I say that? Well, again, I mean, 13,800 and roughly 13,000 again in February. I have the exact numbers here. So there you see like 27,000 deliveries for Nio currently in January and February. Let's add 20,000 to that. Even in best case scenario with 20,000 additionally in March, we would be roughly, 47,000 cars. And that is obviously way, way down compared to last quarter, Q4 of 2024. And that's going to be visible in the revenue, because I still have not updated my expectations for Q1. But this number, the 3.3 billion, was what I was expecting 3-4 months ago. I was expecting a vehicle delivery of 84,000, and this was not me being optimistic. This was based on the company and yeah, the CEO and all people higher up in the company explaining to us that their plan, I mean Nios own plan, was to sell 20,000 cars just from their sub-brand called Onvo. And obviously they managed to sell 13,000 in January and another 13,000 in February, combining Onvo and the traditional classical Nio brand. So they are in a scenario where they truly overpromised, and not by a small. I think this is probably, in my opinion, the worst overpromising in terms of Nio over the past three years, and the worst under-deliver. I have to be honest. Now, obviously, the stock price has been going up a little bit over the past couple of sessions. We are now above $5. It's good to see. 18% up over the past month, and roughly 18% up year to date. That's at least something nice to see for once with Nio. But I think everything will depend on the net loss and the guidance. Well, the guidance we know will gonna be really bad. So I think the market has actually accepted that the Q1 delivery is gonna be really bad. They're probably gonna hint at maybe, yeah, I would argue that they're probably gonna hint at some improvement already in April. I wouldn't put past them that they will really emphasize on, okay, it's gonna be a really low Q1 deliveries, but April is gonna be really strong, right? That's something like that. But then also I think, yeah, the important line there is obviously net loss. We need to start to see some improvement here. Best case scenario would be 550, maybe 600 million, but I think more realistic is around 700 million net loss. It's not like alarmingly bad, but it's obviously nowhere near good enough at this current stage. Going to Xpeng, for example, again, we can see that the vehicle margin is going up just around 10% now. Gross margin slightly going down a little bit, but I think it's partly due to that their R&D expenses is quite interestingly going up substantially for Xpeng. So it's a kind of different beast for Xpeng. They also don't have this capital investment in the infrastructure, which is the Nio swap infrastructure. Although we can see, if you follow this gentleman Nio swap info, you can see that over the past 30 days they average almost 90,000 daily swaps. So going back to my own numbers there on the swap infrastructure, it leaves us roughly at just above 30 swaps per station per day, which is half of the, according to Nio, break-even number. Although I think that break-even number they mentioned there is very old now, probably a couple of years old. You would argue with the scale that they are currently in the term of swap infrastructure, that's probably a little bit lowered. But this thing is gonna be really interesting to follow. Are they gonna be as aggressive as they've been over the past 3 or 4 months in expansion? Remember that in October they had roughly 2,600 swap stations, and already in February there are over 3,100. So quickly on the lithium carbonate price, still in the lows, so that's good to see. Gonna be really great for the battery, which is a huge part of the cost, and lithium is a huge part of the cost of the actual battery cells. So this is gonna continue to be at these low levels, which is really good. Then finally, update on the Nio partnership with CATL to create the world's largest battery swap network. That's always great to see. And again, together with William Lee, that mentions that they're gonna control the cost a little bit better. We can see that Nio to allow ET9 test drives in the next weekend. That was set 5 days ago, so it's probably essentially this week up and coming. So there's a lot of good stuff happening. The stock price, as I mentioned, is still at least somewhat up 18%. But the most important thing is gonna be accept that March delivery numbers is gonna be weak, but hopefully they are confident about April delivery numbers. That's gonna be really important. I want to see April delivery numbers close to 30,000. I'm sorry, anything less than that, I would start to get worried, because even if for once they surprise in terms of getting close to profitability, like net loss, let's say they surprise that they come with a net loss of 600 million, right, instead of 700 million. Even in that scenario, sadly, this single quarter, it's the wrong time to maybe surprise on the good side in terms of net loss. Why do I say that? Well, because now we know that the Q1 deliveries is gonna be like at best 40 or so thousand, which is substantially less than previous quarter Q4. So in any case, even if they beat, surprise us on net loss, already in Q1 of, earnings in Q1 for this year, they're gonna, have a marginally, like quite substantially lower revenue and most likely much worse net loss due to the, lost sales in terms of competitiveness with the other car companies. So I think it's gonna be interesting. Hopefully on the 21st we have more data on this. I will update you. But yeah, that was just a quick update and to manage your expectations in terms of the numbers. And the stock has been run up a little bit lately. So if net loss kind of surprise on the negative side, potentially it's gonna be bad. But yeah, so what do you think about Nios future, especially seeing that Xpeng, the main competitor, is essentially outrunning Nio in terms of stock price, and it's been doing that over the past year. So please comment in the comment section and see you in the next one.